Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Happy Jayanthi to all. For this celebration, Tampa Group humbly offers Bhagavan's Childhood by Rosa, True Happiness by Walter, Adi Illada Anandam by Madi. Namo Ramana.
Namaskar, this is Rosa from Tampa. Today, in this Jayanthi celebration, I am reading on Bhagavan's birth and childhood from the book Alagamal's Journey by Gita Bhatt. And it's like this. Alagama, mother of Venkataraman, was born in the village of Pasalai, near the city of Madurai in the state of Tamil Nadu, India. She was one of 7 children born to Nagasundaram Iyer and Lakshmi. Following the social norm of those days, she was married to Sundaram Iyer at a young age. Sundaram Iyer was the second son of Lakshmi and Naganathan Iyer, who lived across the river in the town of Tiruchuri. His father had died, and when Sundaram was still a teenager, his older brother, Venkateswara Iyer, left home to visit a holy shrine and subsequently was never heard of again. It was later reported that the brother had taken to sannyasa. Hence, the responsibility of providing for his 2 younger brothers and maintaining his mother's household fell on Sundaram's shoulders at the tender age of 16. His young bride, Alagama, was suited in every respect to share this responsibility with him. Sundaram was an intelligent, hardworking young man who by his efforts rose in the legal profession in his town and became a well-respected pleader. Sundaram's Iyer professional success enabled him to build a large house. In fact, Sundaram Iyer became well known in the area not only as a skilled pleader, but also as an honest man and generous host. He and his wife were prominent in the community, and his young wife tended the kitchen and ran the household with skill and care. Alagama was not only an efficient housewife, but also a skilled midwife who freely offered help to women in her village during childbirth. It is recalled that she always had a bag of needed medical supplies ready by the back door of the house. When word reached her of a difficult childbirth, Alagama would rush to the aid of the woman in need. Her tiny, delicate hands could facilitate the birth. Her compassion at such time took precedence over the strict caste rules she followed at other times. A woman in labor, whether rich or poor, Brahmin or otherwise, would receive her care and loving service. The young couple, while fulfilling all the duties of a householder as enjoined by the scriptures, were also raising a family. Their first son, Nagaswami, was almost 2 years old, and Alagama was expecting their second child before the end of the year. On a cool, starry night of December in 1879, Alagama was in the confinement room of her home, awaiting the birth of her second child. A few oil lamps cast a soft glow around the room. Her own mother sat by her side, while a trusted old midwife attended on Alagama. Although the midwife was partially blind, her experienced hands had delivered many a babe with skill and love. Within the house, Sundaram Iyer was watching his 2-year-old son, attentive to the sounds coming from the confinement room. The night was soon to end. Alagama could hear the sounds of the temple drums and Nagaswaram at a distance. It was the night of Ardra Darshan by the Tamil calendar, the holy night of Shiva's manifestation as Nataraya. The simple and devout people of Tiruchuri were in a deep, spiritually uplifted mood. Men, women, and children were out in the street following the procession of Lord Nataraya, offering prayers on this sacred night of nights. The deity of the Bhuminateswara temple had proceeded through the street of the town and was about to re-enter the temple. At that moment, in the house of Sundaram Iyer, a holy child entered this world. The midwife held the newborn in her arms and witnessed the room suffused with bright white light. A little while later, when she conveyed the joyous news of the birth of a healthy baby boy to the father and showed him the baby, she also mentioned what she had just experienced. The son was given the name of Venkataraman. The hour of his birth was close to the time of the birth of Lord Krishna, and the calendar date was December 30th, 1879, a few days after the celebration of Christmas. Sundaram Iyer maintained an open house for visiting relatives, clients, and mendicants. In his home, wandering sadhus were always welcome with an open heart and attended to with respect. Alagamal cheerfully sang devotional hymns as she performed her household chores and looked after her children, visitors, and sadhus. Nevertheless, a faint memory of a family curse lingered on. A few generations back, a member of the Iyer family had failed to respectfully attend to a wandering ascetic who had predicted that, due to this transgression, one male child in every generation from then on would renounce the world and become an ascetic. In the British India of that time, a good education guaranteed a safe and secure job with the British bureaucracy, and families aspired for such a future for their children. Nagaswami, the oldest son, was a disciplined and studious boy. The family's hope for greater economic prosperity rested on his shoulders. Venkataraman, on the other hand, was indifferent to formal education and appeared to prefer playing with his friends in the neighborhood. At times, he helped his mother in the kitchen. In fact, it was noticed by his Madurai aunt in later years that if she was making any preparation on a large scale for some special occasion, for example, making appalam, and he helped with the preparation, the entire task would become flawless and effortless. This skill earned Venkataraman the name Tandakai, which means golden hand, from her. His friends similarly considered him lucky and wanted him on their teams to ensure success in competitive games and races. Once, on a cool rainy day, the streets around the family house were flooded with a heavy torrent, and the unpaved street turned into rivulets of fast gushing water. Venkataraman, now 6 years old, was out in the street playing with his friends. The children ran through the water, splashed each other, and danced in the rain. Someone suggested that to float paper boats would be great fun, but to find so much paper was a problem. Venkataraman knew his lawyer father had lots of paper stacked up in bundles in his room. He ran into the house, gathered up a bundle, and with that the boys made lots of boats, sent them to sail, and had hours of fun. But then the sun came out, and the rainwater drained from the street. The dirt roads became lightly packed with mud, giving off a pleasant cooling fragrance. The children went back to their own homes, leaving behind the limp, wet paper boats as evidence of the fun. Sundaram Iyer was walking back home after a long day at the courthouse. As he neared his house, he could hear the happy voices of his family. The oil lamps were soon to be lit. As he walked, pieces of limp wet paper in the street caught his eye, but as he got closer to his house, he saw more. Sundaram Ayar bent down and picked one up. It looked familiar, and on closer examination, he found that it was from one of his closed legal files. He thundered into the house, demanding to know who had entered his room without permission and taken one of his case files. Venkataraman owned up to his action and received a severe scolding. In the torment of his distress, the innocent child fled. Alagama heard all the commotion from her kitchen, but she was busy with the preparation of the evening meal. The sun was setting, it was time for the evening prayers, and an early supper before the town of Tiruchuri would become enveloped in the darkness of night, but for the faint flicker of light from the oil lamps. Venkataraman still had not come home. Alagama, though busy with her work, was worried by his absence. Her quiet, mild-mannered boy, hurt by his father's angry words, was probably hiding somewhere in the neighborhood. She made discreet inquiries, but no one had seen her little boy. Alagama had been hoping to soothe his hurt with special attention during the evening meal, but to her mounting concern, the boy was not in the house, nor had he been seen by anyone in the neighborhood. The town was quiet. The evening meals were over, and families were about to retire for the night, having heard the last toll of the temple bells. It was already dark. Then Alagama heard the voice of the Bhuminateswara temple priest in the front room talking to her husband. I went in to close the door to the inner shrine of Devi Sahayavali and detected some movement. In the dark, I could hardly see him, but there your boy was, sitting behind the Devi's murti. I do not know how long he was there, but here he is. So saying, the priest left. Alagama rushed into the front room to gather her little boy in her arms and brought him into the kitchen to feed him. She yearned to shelter him in the safety of her love, not realizing the great import of this event. Venkataraman had sought the protection of the Universal Mother in the form of Sahayavali when his father had been displeased with him. This action of his was uncharacteristic, since until this day he had preferred to play in the temple complex rather than formally visit the inner shrine. Except for this one unusual incident in the early childhood of Venkataraman, life proceeded smoothly. His father was respected in and around the town for his professional skills and generosity. His mother, Alagama, was of a cheerful disposition. She loved to sing the songs of the well-known poets, saints of Tamil Nadu, and the house was purified by the sound of her devotion and the purity of her love for God. In such a peaceful home where the children were loved, the parents respected, visitors welcomed, and neighbors and extended family warmly received, Venkataraman grew up alone with his elder brother Nagaswami and his two younger siblings, his brother Nagasundaram and his sister Alamedu. After completing studies in primary school in Tiruchuri, Venkataraman was sent to attend school in the town of Dindigul at a distance of 80 kilometers, a long distance in those days of travel by foot or bullock cart. He attended that school for only a year. His paternal uncle, Subba Ayar, and maternal uncle, grandmother of Vishwanatha Swami, lived in the same town, and it is likely that Venkataraman alternated between these two homes. The year was 1892, when the unthinkable happened. Suddenly and unexpectedly, Sundaram Iyer passed away. Venkataraman was 12 and his older brother 14 years of age at that time. There were neither savings nor any other visible means of support for Alagama. In her grief, she must have wondered how to protect and educate her children. Sundaram's Iyer's two brothers offered to help. The younger brother, Suba Iyer, agreed to take the two older boys, with him to Madurai, where he was moving from Dindigul, and to bear all expenses of their living and education. The new arrangement meant that the family of 5 had to reluctantly agree to live separately. Alagama and the 2 little ones were to go with Neliapa Iyer to live with his family in the small town of Manamadurai. Neither of these brothers was prosperous, and thus the addition of 2 or 3 new members in their household must have been a financial burden. But true to the tradition of India, everyone cheerfully contributed to the task of raising the family of the deceased brother. This is the end of my reading today. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
I'm reading excerpts from the book True Happiness, The Teachings of Ramana Maharshi, edited by Arthur Osborne. The book contains discourses of Bhagavan and commentaries by Arthur Osborne, who group Bhagavan's teachings and talks together under certain themes or topics. So, for instance, under the first heading, entitled The World, Real or Illusion, we read the following. Major Chadwick was copying out the English translation of the Tamil Kaivalya Navanita when he came across some technical terms that he found difficult to understand. He accordingly asked Bhagavan about them, and Bhagavan replied. Vedanta says that the cosmos springs into view simultaneously with him who sees it, and there is no detailed process of creation. It is similar to a dream, where he who experiences the dream arises simultaneously with the dream he experiences. However, some people cling so fast to objective knowledge that they are not satisfied when told this. They want to know how sudden creation can be possible and argue that an effect must be preceded by a cause. Therefore, the scriptures try to satisfy their curiosity by creation stories. This method of dealing with the subject is called the theory of gradual creation, but the true spiritual seeker should be satisfied with instantaneous creation, or Drishti Shrishtivada. Under the next grouping, in True Happiness, called The Nature of Man, Arthur Osborne states, we come now to the very essence of the theory, the nature of man or woman themselves. For whatever they may think of the reality of the world or of God, they know that they themselves exist. The themes of existence are expounded in the following talk. Bhagavan speaking. The individual being which identifies its existence with that of the life in the physical body is called the ego I. The self, which is pure consciousness, has no ego sense about it. Neither can the physical body, which is inert in itself, have this ego sense. Between the two, that is, between the self or pure consciousness and the inert physical body, there arises mysteriously the ego sense, or I notion. It's a hybrid which is neither body nor self, and it begins to flourish as an individual being. That ego concept is at the root of all that is futile and undesirable in life. Yet, despite that ego sense, no one is ever away from his self, and therefore everyone is in fact self-realized. Only, and this is the great mystery, people do not know this and when to realize the self. Realization consists only in getting rid of the false idea that one is not realized. It is not anything new to be acquired. It must already exist, or it would not be eternal, and only what is eternal is worth striving for. Arthur Osborne comments on the frequently used analogy of deep sleep and realization. He says, but this analogy gave rise to the mistaken idea that the state of realization or abidance in the self was a state of nescience, like physical sleep, and therefore Bhagavan guarded against this false notion, as can be seen in the following talk. Bhagavan speaking. In fact, one name for the true state of realized being is the fourth state, existing eternally behind the three states of waking, dream, and deep sleep. It is compared with the state of deep sleep, since like this, it is formless and non-dual. But it is far from being the same. In the fourth state, the ego merges in consciousness, whereas in sleep it merges in unconsciousness. The subsequent chapter in the book deals with the issue of death and rebirth. Arthur Osborne notes that nowhere did Bhagavan show more clearly that theory has to be adapted or subjugated to the understanding of the seeker than in the question of death and rebirth. For those who were capable of grasping pure, non-dual theory, he explained merely that the question does not arise. For if the ego has no real existence now, it has none after death either. On occasion, however, Bhagavan did admit of a lower, contingent point of view for those who could not hold to the doctrine of pure non-dualism. So from the level of apparent reality or duality, Bhagavan would admit as follows. Bhagavan speaking. Just as with dreams, where you wake up after several new experiences, so after death another body is found. See how a tree grows again when its branches are cut off. So long as the life source is not destroyed, it will grow. Similarly, latent potentialities withdraw into the heart at death, but do not perish. That is how beings are reborn. Here, however, Arthur Osborne interjects that from the higher viewpoint, Bhagavan would say, in truth, there is neither seed nor tree, there is only being. Next, in True Happiness, under the category Heart and Head, Arthur Osborne emphasizes how Bhagavan taught that the heart, not the head, is the true seat of consciousness, and what Bhagavan means by heart. The following talk clarifies Bhagavan's viewpoint, and Bhagavan speaking. I ask you to observe where the ego I arises in your body, but it is not really quite correct to say that the ego I arises from and merges into the chest at the right side. The heart is another name for the reality, and this is neither inside nor outside the body. There can be no in or out for reality, since it alone is. Bhagavan continues. I do not mean by heart my physiological organ or any plexus or nerves or anything like that. But so long as a man identifies himself with the body or thinks he is in the body, he is advised to see where in the body the ego I thought arises and merges again. It must be the heart at the right side of the chest, since every man of whatever race and religion and in whatever language he may be speaking points to the right side of the chest to indicate himself when he says I. Finally, Part 2 of the book True Happiness is called From Theory to Practice. And here Arthur Osborne elucidates. Bhagavan did sometimes make pronouncements that seemed superficially like affirmations of complete predestination. When he left home in his youth, already established in self-realization, his mother sought and at last found him. He was maintaining silence at that time. Therefore, on her request to return home with her, he wrote out his reply instead of replying verbally. And here is the famous passage. The ordainer controls the fate of souls in accordance with their prarabdha karma. Whatever is destined not to happen will not happen, try as you may. Whatever is destined to happen will happen, do what you may to prevent it. This is certain. The best course, therefore, is to remain silent. However, Arthur Osborne recounts a pertinent conversation. Devotee. Has man any free will, or is everything in his life predetermined? Bhagavan. Free will exists together with the individuality. As long as the individuality lasts, so long is there free will. All the scriptures are based on this fact and advise directing the free will in the right channel. Now Osborne comments. Is this really a contradiction of the reply given to his mother? No, because according to Bhagavan's teaching, the individuality has only an illusory existence. So long as one imagines that one has a separate individuality, so long does one also imagine its free will. The two exist together inevitably. The problem of predestination and free will has always plagued philosophers and theologians, and will always continue to do so, because it is insoluble on the plane of duality, that is, on the supposition of one being who is the creator and a lot of other separate beings who are created. If they have free will, then he is not omnipotent and omniscient. He does not know what will happen because it depends on what they decide. And he cannot control all happenings because they have the power to change them. On the other hand, if he is omniscient and omnipotent, he has foreknowledge of all that will happen and controls everything, and therefore they can have no power of decision, that is, no free will. But on the level of Advaita or non-duality, the problem fades out and ceases to exist. In truth, the ego has no free will because there is no ego. But on the level of apparent reality, the ego consists of free will. It is the illusion of free will that creates the illusion of the ego. The next sentence in his answer turns the questioner away from theory to practice. Bhagavan speaking. Find out who it is who has free will or predestination and abide in that state. Then both are transcended. That is the only purpose in discussing these questions. To whom do those questions present themselves? Discover that and be at peace. This ends the excerpts I have chosen from the fascinating book, True Happiness, the teachings of Ramana Maharshi. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
ஆதியில்லாத ஆனந்தம் அந்தமில்லாத ஆனந்தம் சாங். ஆதியில்லாத ஆனந்தம் அந்தமில்லாத ஆனந்தம். ஆதியில்லாத ஆனந்தம் அந்தமில்லாத ஆனந்தம். குருநாதன் தந்த ஆனந்தம். குருநாதன் தந்த ஆனந்தம். தந்தை ரமணன் தந்த இந்த ஆனந்தம். நதியாய் மாறி மழையாய் வந்து நதியாய் மாறி கடலில் கரைந்த ஆனந்தம் அருள் கடலில் கரைந்த ஆனந்தம் ஆனந்தம் பரமானந்தம் அருணாச்சல ரமணானந்தம் ஆனந்தம் பரமானந்தம் அருணாச்சல ரமணானந்தம் ஆதியில்லாத ஆனந்தம் அந்தமில்லாத ஆனந்தம் விதையாய் வந்து மலராய் மாறி விதையாய் வந்து மலராய் மாறி என்றும் வாடாத ஆனந்தம் என்றும் வாடாத ஆனந்தம் ஆனந்தம் பரமானந்தம் அருணாச்சல ரமணானந்தம் ஆனந்தம் பரமானந்தம் அருணாச்சல ரமணானந்தம் ஆதியில்லாத ஆனந்தம் அந்தமில்லாத ஆனந்தம் சொந்தமில்லாத பந்தமில்லாத சொந்தமில்லாத பந்தமில்லாத நானே இல்லாத ஆனந்தம் நானே இல்லாத ஆனந்தம் ஆனந்தம் பரமானந்தம் அருணாச்சல ரமணானந்தம் ஆனந்தம் பரமானந்தம் அருணாச்சல ரமணானந்தம் ஆதியில்லாத ஆனந்தம் அந்தமில்லாத ஆனந்தம் கண்ணை பார்த்தால் கதையை கேட்டால் கண்ணை பார்த்தால் கதையை கேட்டால் சும்மா இருந்தாலே ஆனந்தம் சும்மா இருந்தாலே ஆனந்தம் ஆனந்தம் பரமானந்தம் அருணாச்சல ரமணானந்தம் ஆனந்தம் பரமானந்தம் அருணாச்சல ரமணானந்தம் ஆதியில்லாத ஆனந்தம் அந்தமில்லாத ஆனந்தம் குருநாதன் தந்த ஆனந்தம் தந்தை ரமணன் தந்த இந்த ஆனந்தம் தந்தை ரமணன் தந்த இந்த ஆனந்தம் ஆதியில்லாத ஆனந்தம் அந்தமில்லாத ஆனந்தம் அந்தமில்லாத ஆனந்தம் அந்தமில்லாத ஆனந்தம். Namo Ramana. We conclude our program. Turn it over to Austin, Texas. Namo Ramana.